Okay, it's 5 o'clock. You ready back there? You good? Okay. We will call the mini budget workshop of the City Commission for Tuesday, 26th of January to order. Please silence your cell phone. City Clerk, if you would call the roll.
Mayor Owen.
Here.
Vice Mayor Sachs.
Here.
Commissioner Hartman.
Here.
Commissioner Colodi.
Here.
Commissioner McGurk.
Here.
Thank you.
First item is public participation. Ma'am, anything to share? You're the only public here, so it's you. All right. Seeing no public participation, we'll move to the workshop. I think we're going to start with the fire department. Chief, if you would. We do have a hard stop right at 6, so I'm going to keep this to an hour, gentlemen, if we can all work towards that. So
Well, it will not be my fault if we run to past 6 o'clock.
I'm sure. I just throwing it out there early on.
So we met same time last year. Had a pretty substantial capital improvement plan, which seemed to fall pretty well on you guys, and you seemed to kind of agree with some of the direction we were going. And then come February, COVID kind of wiped all that out. So we really leaned everything back. Same thing coming to you gentlemen this year. Definitely a lean budget. We're not talking about anything that drastic. Couple of big items that we need to consider for long term. But for this budget cycle coming up, there won't be anything that'll give you any kind of sticker shock by any means. Fire department's broken up into 3 different categories, 3 areas of public safety that we address. First being your traditional fire and EMS services. That's what we provide at the engine company level with our 4 fire stations, each staffed with at least 1 paramedic, running 5,000 calls a year. Almost 3,000 of them being EMS calls. Second division that we operate is a medical transport division with our single ambulance in New Smyrna Beach that's run by the New Smyrna Beach Fire Department. We transported 1,903 people to the hospital last year. Out of our 3,500 EMS calls, we transported 54% of all of the EMS calls in the city. We transported with our 1 single ambulance to local hospitals. And then the last is emergency management. That covers 2 aspects. That's preparation for storms, natural disasters, man-made disasters. Also mitigation efforts. Anything that we propose going forward that would be something that would help mitigate future loss. Mitigation dollars are actually pay off in response to disaster about 4 to 1. So every dollar you spend in mitigation, you get about 4 in return for loss prevention. You won't see any mitigation proposals this year because I have Melissa working diligently to try to bolster up some mitigation programs that will help make us more resilient, make us more prepared for natural man-made disasters in the coming years. Almost 6,000 responses last year. Those are fire, EMS, motor vehicle accidents, catching the tree, everything else that you can think of, fire alarms. That all falls in that category. You'll see that we are 90% compliant in our response time, and we had 1 civilian fire casualty last year. We lost $1.4 million in property due to fire, but we protected and saved $11.3 million in property. So for each $1 million we lost, we saved 11, which I know it doesn't sound like an amazing number, but for the people who live there, it's actually pretty significant. A few key strategic issues for us coming up. Traffic preemption, or traffic in town. One of the ways we're going to mitigate that is through traffic preemption. That's the automation with the traffic lights. You actually approved it in last year's budget, so we are working that process with Volusia County to move forward and get control of all the traffic lights in New Smyrna. We have aging fire protection systems throughout the area. That's condos, beachside condos especially. They're subject to salt and air and all the things that make everything rust and corrode. So we have our 2 fire marshals are working diligently to make sure that those systems are up and running. When people go to bed at night, they assume that the sprinklers overhead are going to work to put a fire out, and that's not always the case if those systems aren't kept up. Regional Training Center, I'm going to address that a little bit later. Expansion and annexation, as we continue to gain rooftops, if you will, or annex rooftops into the city, that's going to increase our call volume. Also increases our response times or the lack of availability of equipment. So that's another strategic issue we have that's going to be facing us in the next couple of years. And obviously we are constantly working with Volusia County and our neighbors in Port Orange and Edgewater to always maintain a good cooperative mutual aid, auto aid agreement. There's no money changing hands between these auto aid agreements. It's an in-kind trade. Basically, there's no boundaries between Volusia County and the city right now because we have that kind of seamless interoperability between the two agencies.
Can I ask you a quick question on that?
Absolutely.
I know no money changes hands.
Mhm.
The balance of calls, would you say we're more often responding to help out on the county side? How often are they the
Right.
first ones there when it's a city property?
Right, and I would have to speak to that anecdotally only.
Yeah.
But I would say it's pretty dead even right now. That being said, there is talk about in the Station 23, which is behind the Winn-Dixie, them relocating out to the New Smyrna Speedway at some point. It's in their master plan. So when that were to happen, we're definitely going to have to have some conversations with the county. There has to be some kind of cost sharing or offset there. If we lose that type of coverage, then we definitely have to talk about getting reimbursed somehow.
But right now, you would say, again, anecdotally,
Yeah, anecdotally.
granted, that it's 50-50, meaning there's something that happens where it's a New Smyrna address, New Smyrna taxpayer, but a county engine is responding and they're on scene before we could get there, versus the other way around, where it's a county address, but we're the closer unit and we're responding before the county can be there.
That's correct, and I can definitely. That's a pretty easy report to pull, so I can definitely pull that up.
I'd love to see that.
And get you those numbers. The other thing that kind of binds us to that is there's actually in Volusia County there's an EMS ordinance. It doesn't talk about fires and fire alarms and lift assist, but if you have an emergency medical call, the Volusia County ordinance says that the closest fire unit will respond to that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's not the right-
of boundary.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's not the right thing to do.
Right.
Please don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's data, and then there's what we should
Absolutely,
do. So I'm
and
just-
that report
I'm
I can
just talking
definitely get
data.
pulled up. That's a pretty easy one
Okay.
to pull, and I can definitely send it to you gentlemen, and we can start measuring that up pretty well.
Thank you.
I'm going to be presenting four items for consideration for the coming year. Fire engine replacement, hydraulic rescue tools, a second ambulance for New Smyrna, and a fire training facility. The current request for a fire engine, and this is where sticker shock comes in, and that's what I need you guys to consider, how we want to best do this in the future. We'll be replacing an 18-year-old engine within our fleet. Our oldest frontline unit right now is a 2009, so it's 12 years old now, and that's stationed at Station 53. If and when that truck gets replaced, it will go to reserve status. That truck will then replace the 03, which is 18 years old. So that 03 will go away, basically, and the 11-year-old truck, 12-year-old truck will go into reserve status. That's a pretty big lifespan for a fire truck. 12 years is pretty significant, and it's still in pretty good shape. So we've been maintaining it. Our fleet's been maintaining it pretty well, but it's getting to that point where it's got enough hours and enough mileage on it that it's starting to show wear, reliability issues. We were pump testing today even, and we had some things we had to remedy. But for you gentlemen to consider is going forward, this is a $550,000, $600,000 investment in replacement of a single fire truck. And the question is how best to do that. Do we pay outright? Do we budget for a $600,000 replacement? Do we take out the 10-year loan like we did the low-interest loan like we did several years ago, and replace it that way? Or do we set up a recurring, predictable set number every 3 years, every 4 years to help kind of just smooth out the replacement cost, as opposed to just coming at you with $600,000 at a time and saying, I need a new truck? Can we just program that out and make it predictable, make it something that you can that's more palatable to you, makes it easy for the finance department to budget if it's predictable? Yes.
Remind me, are we able to put aside certain amount of money each year and a special fund for this? We had a lot of discussions about that at one time in the past.
Mhm.
And any problem with setting up that kind of account?
I don't foresee a problem with it. You would have to lean on Carrie and Natalia for that to make 100% sure it's proper. But It certainly is not problematic from the operations side of the house. It makes perfect sense to us.
What I meant was obviously the financial aspect,
Right.
whether or not we can legally do
Right,
that,
correct.
how that would work. Okay.
Correct.
So, if you ordered it today, how soon would you get it?
If I order it today, anywhere between 12 and 16 months.
Okay.
And that's if I already had it specified and all that. And remember, with both this fire apparatus that we're talking about and the fire training center we're talking about, steel doesn't cost what it cost, 6 months ago. Aluminum doesn't cost what it cost 6 months ago. So these prices always are going up constantly, and just like building anywhere, it's going to keep on going up. I'm not trying to be the car salesman and say you have to buy it now or the price is going to go up. I'm just going to just be aware that metal costs money and labor costs money.
But you did a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, but my point is, there's about a 12 to 16 month
Yeah.
lead time,
Absolutely.
even after it's approved
Absolutely.
or ordered.
Mhm.
And that again, it is depending on labor issues, at the manufacturer or anything else like that.
Mhm.
Now, is this one going to specifically be 453?
That would be the vehicle that it replaces, so that's where it would be stationed at, yeah, correct. There's no, it would be no different than the one that's on the beach side or the one that's next to Kmart Wawa area. It would be exactly the same vehicle, built to the same specifications, so there's no reason to move pieces and parts around. If I'm replacing the oldest engine at Station 53 with this one, it'll fall in line.
Do any of our engines now have foam capability?
So the two newest engines, which
Okay.
are on Beachside and Station 50, both have foam.
All right.
They have 30-gallon foam cells on them, so they do have foam capabilities.
Okay.
And the new one at 53 would have the same.
So you kind of touched on one of my questions with that, but just to expound a little bit, and this isn't my space at all, but have there been, your average consumer vehicle over the past 12 years has radically changed in
Sure.
technology, interface, et cetera, efficiencies, all of the above. Has there, and this isn't questioning, this is more just as I talk to the public about whatever we do here, has there been the same kind of advancements in the fire space, or is it fundamentally the same thing, but you're just getting rid of old equipment for maintenance reasons?
So there's two factors that would drive the cost up. One being technology changes, and as it does, things that would be, like, for example, anti-lock brakes, which used to be a novelty or a option on a vehicle, are now not optional, they're now required. Fire trucks will be in the same category. Fire trucks are not required today to have airbags in them. But the NFPA, which kind of dictates the industry standard for all fire apparatus and basically everything that has fire attached to it, we'll be leaning towards that at some point. I assure you
We
that
should get
the
airbags.
airbags and rollover anti-protection and all that. So, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
so even though fire apparatus is 10 or 15 years behind the automobiles, doesn't mean that, like in the trucking industry, they will catch up with that.
So there are, the takeaway is there are some, in addition to just getting a newer unit that's going to be easier to maintain, there are some technological advances that we can have that we don't have in old equipment.
That's correct.
That'll better serve our firefighters, keep them safer, and/or better serve the public. Okay.
And two other items that are obviously reliability goes up.
Right.
Emissions go down with newer equipment. Now with the newer EPA regulations, emissions on all over the road vehicles, including fire trucks, is much
Yeah.
cleaner than it was 10 years ago.
Okay.
So, and our fleet loves to work on that kind of stuff.
So I was kind of leading to that, if we increase the foam capability, would there be a way to get some of those costs from the airport? Because are we not providing aircraft fire rescue for them?
We are, but we actually have those capabilities are already in place in the vehicle we have. It's just not automated to the level that I think we should be at on an airport, for example.
Right.
It should be a whole lot quicker than the setup we have now, which is assembling this piece and that piece to get there on the existing vehicle. Obviously, the two newer vehicles that we bought and this replacement one would be a whole lot more efficient at putting the bubbles on the plane, which is what you're looking to do.
Yeah, because our traffic at the airport is increasing every year, and sooner or later, and we've had a couple accidents already this year.
Yeah.
So sooner or later, there's going to be a crash or a fire
Sure.
at the airport.
And we recently acquired an ARF truck through the military surplus.
All right.
And that is actually intentional. That's a airport-based vehicle. It doesn't go anywhere else. It sits on the airport. It didn't cost us anything to acquire that vehicle,
Okay.
but it has that ability to immediately apply foam. That said, it does only carry 1,000 gallons of water and 180 gallons of foam. So there is a support mechanism or a support need from the engine based out of that same firehouse.
Right.
Our trucks don't respond by themselves, so it would need support from the vehicle like you're
Staffing,
describing.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else? Last year, you gentlemen approved almost $70,000 for hydraulic rescue tools. Those have been purchased. They've been placed in service. We've trained them. We've used them. They are far superior to the hydraulics we were running that were anywhere between 10 and 18 years old. They meet the needs of modern vehicles, just like we had mentioned 5 minutes ago. Technology changing, materials are changing, the way they build vehicles are changing. We had to adapt, and we had to get our tools to meet that need. This coming year, I'm going to request the second half of that purchase, nearly $70,000 to buy, and it would be 100% outfit. Last year, we bought half of the fleet worth of Amicus tools, and this coming year, I'd do the same. Request to do the same at $70,000. Second ambulance. Obviously, like we talked about earlier, we ran 1,903 transports last year. I don't see that number changing dramatically, only because the capacity of any one given vehicle for any 1 year period can only do so much. If they threw every call at us in the city of New Smyrna Beach, that ambulance will only be available for a part of the time. So where we saw a growth of 400 calls to 1,200 calls to 1,700 calls to 1,900 transports in over a 4-year period, that's got to plateau at some point. There's no continual growth on that. There's just not enough hours or minutes in the day for that vehicle to be running those calls. To that end, to meet the needs of the population, we're requesting a second ambulance to be bought out of impact fee money. Because it will help address some population needs, some transport needs within the city, also the ability to backfill or to fill in for the other ambulance. It would be applicable to impact fees. Carrie and I have discussed it, and to make sure we've definitely consulted a few different people on how impact fees will be applied to that. So we're going to be very cautious in how we go forward with it, because it does need to meet the needs of the population, and that's what we're looking to do. That said, a typical $220,000 ambulance is no good if it doesn't have all the stuff that it needs on it, being a stretcher, being the radios and all that other stuff. So the cost of a new ambulance today to be fully equipped and ready for service is about $300,000 with everything on it.
So we got 500 for the fire truck and 300 for the ambulance?
Mm-hmm.
Seems like the fire truck's a better deal. So, 2 quick questions on that. One is, has there been any progress with the discussion with the county about reimbursement of fees or less fees that we're going to pay out? Where are we at with all that?
So last year we collected $577,000. The total cost of the ambulance that we ran for the same fiscal period, being gas and tires, staffing, fuel, Band-Aids, whatever else you can attach to that vehicle, was $544. So that's a net of $34,000. Yeah, $34,000. Not that we're in the money-making business for ambulance service. It is an enhanced service that we can provide to the people. That said, we're operating in the black on that vehicle, on that particular initiative. So it's certainly not something that should be ignored, the fact that we can offer that type of service to the people and it costs essentially nothing.
No, that's great. And
But to that end, yes, Volusia County does take 10% of every transport for the purpose of billing. And that happens to all partners within the consortium that does the care agreement transport. That's Deltona, Port Orange, Edgewater, myself, and Ponce Inlet. And we have made zero progress with them in adjusting those numbers. Probably the most likely scenario where we'd be able to attack that would be for the southeast region of Volusia County to create some type of partnership and take over billing in itself. Is that me or is that somebody else?
Yeah, I think it's, Jason, I think it's your mic that may be popping. If you can point it up and at you maybe.
Would be for us to all partner in that and attack that in some way. The problem is that the ordinance, the agreement, everything that has to do with the COP, certificate of need within Volusia County is controlled by Volusia County, and we're already cutting into their bottom line by $500,000 a year. So I certainly don't see them being very excited about now giving up another 10% of that, or even a portion of that 10%.
What about staffing for the second ambulance? Do we have it already, or are you going to need?
So the staffing in this scenario, the second ambulance would actually be a stand-up unit, meaning that if they called us and said, hey, we need you to staff that ambulance, that crew from the engine would then staff that ambulance as opposed to staffing the engine out at Station 51, for example. It kind of cuts into the staffing for the fire service and the motor vehicle accident side of the house, but that would be, it's more of a contingency unit than it is a full-time transport unit. It's more of it's a means to supplement our services that we don't have presently.
But as a contingency unit, you wouldn't expect it to generate the same revenue.
Absolutely not.
Which again,
Absolutely
we're
not.
we're not trying to profit off of
Nope.
ambulance services, but I don't want to lose a boatload either. So
Correct.
just
No, absolutely
calling it
not. Yeah,
out.
we have no
Yeah.
vision of it collecting anywhere near what
Yeah.
we're talking about here.
So, but you also wouldn't have necessarily the same level of operating cost, but you would have the upfront investment.
Correct.
And then
Correct.
basically when it ran, it might cover those costs, but any
Correct.
ongoing
Absolutely.
payments would be, probably wouldn't cover it. Okay. Press forward.
Yeah. And lastly, we've been tossing around the idea of this fire training facility for a couple of years now. The biggest issue being site, trying to find a site to put it on. Initially, we were talking about the Waste Pro site that you actually fell off the building on 2 years ago.
I artfully repelled.
Artfully repelled off the building. That one was too costly to lease because even though it's city property, it's kind of governed by the FAA in its usage. So we still have to pay the enterprise of the airport, appropriate lease fees. And it was just too cost prohibitive for us to build a training site there. So we shifted it to another site, which didn't turn out because of wetland problems. So we've now settled on a site between Maintenance Ops and Fire Station 53, which is a 1.2 acre grass field. It is suitable for the needs that we have. It will meet all ISO needs, requirements for spacing. It will give us a building similar to what you see there. And again, the cost for that would be covered entirely by impact fees. So site work, engineering, all of that would be covered by impact fees, construction.
Fire Chief, do you dry your hose in a vertical tower like that?
Can we drag it?
Dry it.
Oh, dry. No, it's not designed to dry. Modern fire hose, we don't dry anyways. With it being synthetic material, it's not something we do anymore.
You don't.
So that building in particular, the building that we would design would have two separate burn areas, the ability to simulate residential buildings, two-story buildings, high-rise condos, things like that. So it would be multi-purpose, and it could even be used by the police department if they needed to do non-shooting events inside of it, room clearing or what have you. As long as they don't put holes in it, it would be suitable for them to use it as well, instead of having to go out to Samsula for their training.
53 is the one right there by the airport, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And so this will be that lot in between, so where would this be again?
Between the maintenance ops building
To the-
and the fire station to the east of the fire station, there's a field there. The fence line that's there right now is actually an arbitrary fence line.
Okay.
Our property line actually goes beyond into maintenance ops property to 20, 25 feet or so.
I'm just thinking, we got some residential to the south of that. Would we be able to assure those folks that we wouldn't have any kind of, wouldn't disturb their peace, for lack of a better term, meaning?
Absolutely. Well, and it being near the airport, we kind of have the same concerns with smoke and things like that. So we'd have the opportunity to either do Class A, which is wood and hay burning in there, or we could also do gas-fired fire in there as well. So gas fire burning would be clean to a large degree. And even on non-burn days, we can actually just smoke it up with synthetic smoke, and it dissipates as soon as it hits the atmosphere. So we could smoke down the building, but it wouldn't reach beyond the extent of the property.
Okay.
So, and obviously the airport's a big concern of ours as well.
Yeah.
Having black acrid smoke crossing the runways is probably not a great idea either.
Okay.
Would this be a joint venture or just?
Joint with whom? With any other
Port
regional
Orange,
fire departments?
Yeah.
No. So Port Orange is working on something similar. Theirs is relying heavily on classroom space that they have, so they won't have the same capacity we have. So they're not interested in joining that kind of effort at all. And with Edgewater, we would end up doing some type of maintenance sharing after the fact. So the upfront construction would fall on the city through impact fees. Maintenance going forward would fall on as a shared effort based on per capita.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've already done per capita surveys with Port Orange and Edgewater, things like that. So there was definitely a formula that we would share that cost.
All right, we're right at the halfway mark, but any questions? Yep,
Yes,
go
sir.
ahead, Colin.
When you talk about the training facility?
Yes, sir.
There is some consideration being given to relocating out of Smith Street with some of our other operations. Would it interfere with that?
So-
Or is
so-
that on the other side?
So I talked to Faith Miller, and her intent is to, her property is bound by the airport property to the north. Obviously, the airport has a hard line there that they don't want maintenance ops to cross into. If you were to look at the long barn that maintenance ops runs currently, the open bay barn that heads south to north, her vision is to turn that into an L and run it across the northern property line of what is now maintenance ops.
And perhaps to use the land to the west of that? And you would be proposing?
To the now, when I walked the property with Faith Miller, she said there was no intent to use that property at all to the west of where she was at, other than to extend an overhang off of what is now the existing building.
Sean,
And so we definitely have that in consideration. Yes, sir.
what Commissioner Kalodi is referring to, him and I, we went over there. That is to the northwest of the area we were looking at, the one that he's put in his training facility. Right now, it's part of his fire station, and he's actually paying for that property under the lease. So it would not be in conflict of the area that we were looking at, you and I.
Okay, that was my concern.
Absolutely. And if
I
you're
thought it was a different tract.
right, and if you ever want to walk out there, I'd be glad to meet you out there, and we can definitely look at it with Faith and make sure we're all singing from the same hymnal, if you will.
Good,
Yeah, absolutely.
thanks.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, remember, gentlemen, this is just kind of a first look and giving him some feedback and giving us stuff to chew on, and obviously final approval and everything will be much, much later. All right. Thank you, Chief. We'll move to our police chief next. In true police fashion, he brought backup.
We always bring backup. Good evening, gentlemen. So for our presentation, it'll look very similar to what we did last year, twice. Particularly what's important here is on our police calls for service. As you see, we had a 3,287 call jump from 2019 to 2020. Fairly significant. When I drill down into those, it's everything from miscellaneous law enforcement calls, mentally ill persons went up, traffic stops went up, parking complaints went up, trespassing, business alarms. The normal top 10 calls that we go to, we're just experiencing more and more of those calls, and I expect that trend's going to continue, particularly as out west continues to build up. So I see this trend, instead of where we had a dip in 18 and 19, I see it probably getting a little bit more. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. This is a slide from last year where we had our ratios to give you some kind of comparison with the surrounding agencies of what we're handling per officer per capita here. Again, that was based on 37 officers that we had, so we're at 33 right now, so I expect that ratio is even going to be a little bit more. Those calls sometimes may only take a few minutes, and then other times they may take hours. There's really no rhyme or reason in a 12-hour shift of where we are with an officer as how many he or she takes in a shift. It's just the luck of the draw. Our current staffing, we're sitting on 7 vacancies now, 6 officers and the deputy chief position. intend to hold that deputy chief position open until we get a little bit closer on being full on the officers. As we speak right now, there are 9 people in process in some form or fashion, whether it's just delivering an application for employment or in process of background or going to school. So I feel fairly confident that if we, knock on wood, don't lose anybody, we should be fairly close this year for the first time in a long time. I think that's largely due to a bunch of different things. But I will tell you that when I went to Daytona State College to do some recruiting earlier last week, all the students there knew that we were the highest paid agency in the county starting out. Every single one of them. They all do their research. They know what our benefits are. They know that the commission and the public support the agency here, which is a big deal. When I left there, I had multiple students that were wanting to come down and do a tour of the agency and talk to us about possibly being employed before. I don't remember a single time since I've been here, in the 6 years I've been here, where we had 9 people in process at any one time. So if there's any light at the end of the tunnel, that's it. And for me and for the officers, I appreciate y'all the support that you've been giving us. The support staff, the civilian staff, both full-time and part-time positions, that shows some vacancies there, but those people are also in process. I expect that the full-time positions will be filled by the end of next week, and the part-time positions right after that. So they're in the latter stages of the background investigation, and I see nothing that will prevent any of them from being hired. So we should be pretty good by the beginning of next month. Budget history, all the way back through 2010, it kind of meanders around a little bit, and we went up pretty well last year for a variety of reasons, but I think that's about where we should be as we move forward. Speaking of that, with our budget requests, I'll go through these individually, and I'll have to defer to Natalia and Shaliza as to whether or not they're in the proper category of operating or capital, because I don't speak finance as well as they do, but this is what my best guess here. We have an AC refurbished repair that needs to be done. We've been putting this off for a couple of years. It mostly deals with duct work and some things that just we can't do on our own. When Chris and I were looking at the one bid that we got to give us an idea of what this is, I'm not a whole lot comfortable with that particular company bidding the thing, because a lot of it seemed to be some overhead that I think that they put a lot of fat in. So we would ask them to go and trim that back down. So to me, that would be a not to exceed price. On our mobile radio P25 compliance, we're kind of at the mercy of some other folks here, particularly the Sheriff's Communications Center. Their plan is to throw a particular switch in 2 years, and if they do that, then we have a multitude of radios that will not be P25 compliant. As we stand right now, we need 62 radios, and we have 24 of those in place right now, which leaves us with 38. Each mobile portable radio is about $3,800 and change as we stand here right now. There's also a software upgrade that needs to be done to those radios. So what we've asked to do is to spread that out over 2 years and possibly even 3 if we can get the Sheriff's Office to hold off on flipping the switch in 2 years. If that's the case, then we would need $60,000 this year, $60,000 next year, which would leave us about 4 to 5 radios in the following year that we could pick up the slack on that. And again, that will be dependent on whether or not we add more positions or what we're doing in terms of the other thing I'll talk about here in just a minute, which is the police workload analysis study. On the vehicle side of life, we have done pretty well. When I got here in 2015, I sat down with the then city manager, and we talked about what it would take to get the fleet back to where we needed it to be. In those years of 2010 to 2013, 14, there was a few years there where we didn't buy enough vehicles. So as it stands right now, we're still holding on to vehicles. I've got a 2005 Ford Crown Vic, a 2008 Crown Vic, 6 2013 Caprices, and a 2011 Tahoe. All of those vehicles right now cost us a ton of money. In particular, the one Caprice, one of the 2013 Caprices, we've spent over almost $36,000 repairing that vehicle, in addition to the cost of the vehicle. And I know that's an operating, and that's probably more preferable to spending a lot of capital, but I could have bought that car at least 2 times over. So what we're asking for is to try to get back to where we needed to be, which is 7 vehicles a year. And in this particular budget cycle, we'd be looking for just marked vehicles. There would be no administrative vehicles at all on the board there. Most of the administrative vehicles are in decent shape. We've got a couple that aren't very good, but we're going to carry those for another year in order to get the marked vehicles up where they should be. Those marked vehicles are, depending on what type of radio that we can either replace or if we have to buy a new mobile radio on that, they're anywhere in the mid $50,000 range to upper $50,000 range. So we figured right at about $400,000 is what we need to do those 7 vehicles. On the operating side, with the animal services line, the Southeast of Volusia Humane Society and the trap, neuter, and release programs, that's the money that we spend on those now. We would just be looking to move that into the lines there. They're right now, I don't know where those lines are coming from. They just kind of materialize somewhere, but we'd be looking to move those into those lines so we can better track those. We're expecting that there might be a slight adjustment to that, but that includes the adjustment. On the police workload analysis, I'm going to be looking to do an analysis based on the actual workload for the police officer, including calls for service, the times and everything. I think that we may be able to partner with one of the universities around here and hopefully get them to pick that up. But if not, then there would be a cost involved with that. We just don't have the staff available right now to complete a study that I would be confident in. And then on the in the wish list and under Impact Trust Fund, whichever one would better fit, our tactical medical program that we started 2 years ago really paid off back in November. When Corporal Hunnefeld was shot, and if you watch those videos, I couldn't tell you how proud I am of the staff because their training kicked right into gear. They drug Corporal Hunnefeld around the corner. They put a tourniquet on him, and when they saw that wasn't working, then they took their quick clot and they stuffed it in both holes. To watch those guys and gals do that, for me, everything that we spent on tactical medical training probably saved his life or serious injury. So what we're looking to do is to up that just a little bit. The hemorrhage mannequin, which we would use and also let fire use, offers us the ability to simulate not only an arterial bleed, but an avulsion, a sucking chest wound, those types of things that we're going to encounter both as police officers and when we are helping the public. So that, I think, really kind of summarizes what we're doing there, and I'll take any questions.
One question real quick. That workload study, is that like a standardized study, or is this something we're kind of pioneering and you're trying to create this, if you will?
When you look at what typically how staffing's done in public safety, particularly in law enforcement, they have done everything from how many officers per 1,000 residents that you have, and then they'll do a workload analysis. They'll do all kinds of other things. A patrol workload analysis. Patrol is really the backbone of the agency. Mm-hmm. Even when we are working a long-term investigative call, it starts in patrol. So when we count those numbers and we see how much time it takes to do a particular call, that's really the benchmark right now to figure out what your staffing should be. And we would look at all the calls for service. We would look at the trend of calls for service. And then as it drills even further down there, we're going to need a little bit more help in terms of anticipating with the growth. I think the impact fee study that was just done will help that. Anticipating how many officers we need to handle the demand in service, as opposed to saying we need one officer per 5,000 residents, which to me, I just don't know how you even make that work.
Gotcha. Okay. And then maybe I zoned out when you talked about it, but did you touch on the license plate reader and the
Oh,
Division
I'm
Bay
sorry.
partnership?
Yep, I meant to say that. When I met with Commissioner Hartman and we went out to talk to the Venetian Bay HOA, they were very interested in doing a partnership with us. So what we did was we came back and looked at what would we need. We contacted the company, and they came back and said, in order to do this, you're going to need to cover 3 of the major intersections, which is Luna Bell and Pioneer, Airport and Pioneer, and 44 and Airport. And we would be able to have cameras that would read tags going in and out, both directions, at every major intersection there, getting in and out of the HOA. So the total cost on that's almost $89,000, and we'd be looking to split that with them. And I'm hoping that they're still interested in doing that. But if not, then we would have to make a decision as to whether or not we wanted to do that project and then foot the whole bill ourselves.
Okay. So that number is the whole bill?
That's the
and
whole
the-
thing. That's
and-
everything.
Gotcha.
That's cameras,
Installation.
fiber, and power to the
Yeah.
poles and stuff.
Okay.
We don't expect that would exceed that cost at all.
Gotcha. Other questions or comments?
Just a few.
Go.
Mr. Mayor. Chief, how many plainclothes detectives do we have?
Detectives?
Yes.
We have 6 detectives right now. We're holding 1 spot open, and then we have 2 plainclothes drug investigators, plus a sergeant.
Thank you. And I'm glad I have both chiefs here. Just a sidebar. Have your departments been offered the COVID vaccination by the county as first responders and offered to anybody who wants one?
Yes, sir. We've strongly encouraged our staff to be vaccinated. Some of us have. I will tell you that it's kind of a long generational lines. The millennials and the Gen Xers and that are not too crazy about the vaccination.
Yes.
Most of us older guys, myself and Mark Severance and a couple others, we're absolutely on that. So yes, we've received the vaccinations. In fact, Lieutenant Kirk and I received our second ones today, and we're kind of, some took the Pfizer, and a couple got the Moderna, and so we're trying to see which one is working out better. But we're strongly encouraging our staff to do that.
Okay. And same for fire? Fire's offered it? Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? I had one more since somebody else is talking. I just keep forgetting to ask you about this. So if we have less personnel, sworn officers, than we would have budgeted, I presume we have patrol cars that are not being used at any given time. Is that an accurate statement or no?
We are covering the minimum mandatory staffing on overtime right now. So we're taking that money that's in the regular salary line and moving it over to the overtime line to cover that.
Okay. So there's never a time when you've just got 4 or 5 cars sitting at the police station that aren't in rotation because we don't have an officer for them, I guess, is my... Where I'm going with it is, as I drive through other cities, sometimes you drive through and all of a sudden there's a patrol car, and then you realize like, oh, it's it's unstaffed. But I check my brakes, like it does that job. And I guess I was thinking one day like, hey, if we have vehicles that aren't being used because we don't have the staffing, which we heard about, what is your thoughts on programs like that? So anyway, we don't have to get into details here, but just remind me to talk to you about that sometime.
Yeah, we've set a minimum staffing both for day shift and night shift, and then on weekdays and weekends, because weekends are typically more busy, and particularly on night shift, I like to keep the night shifts fully staffed because they don't have the ability to have us come out and help them at night as quickly as what we do in daytime. Daytime, if we have a hot call, then they pick up the radio, they call, and all of us empty out the office, and we go out there and handle the call. Night shift is a little bit different. They don't have that luxury.
Gotcha.
So
Right.
Chief, that's why the big difference in the roster, the night rosters, it's nice to see 9 officers on the street. And then some days we have 5, but that's the main reason, because you figured out what you really need.
Well, it's a balance between figuring out what the demand for service is and the available personnel. So what I don't want to do is blow out our regular and overtime budget to staff just saying we need 6 officers, a corporal, and a sergeant every single shift, every single day. If it is necessary, then I try not to staff it. But particularly on weekends, and if we have special events, we may have as many as 12 to 14 officers working. It's just, we kind of look at the demand for service and go with that. Our intelligence-led policing program really helps us with that.
Very good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So I
Good.
think to the mayor's point, with the 7 that we're short, are there patrol cars available for them when they get hired, or would we have to purchase additional vehicles to put them on the road?
There are patrol cars available for those folks, but some of those patrol cars are that 2013 Caprice that is sitting back there. So right now what we're doing is when a car goes down or it needs to be serviced, we're using those cars. And
But you used that last year in the same presentation. I would have thought you'd gotten rid of it by now.
no.
We probably didn't give them the money to.
They're still there. Come by, I'll show them to you. I was gonna show you the picture of the COP cars,
Yeah,
which
I
are
saw.
the 2 old Fords ones again, but I've seen them so many times, it just gets worse every day.
You need to get rid of them.
It's embarrassing when I see them drive. In fact, I don't like those guys driving them at all.
Yeah. Okay. Chief, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Officer, thank you for being here. All right. Commission comments. Any closing comments from the commission on anything we heard today? All right. If not, we will adjourn this meeting, and we will see everyone at 6:30 p.m. Thank you.